Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're doing well. Had a couple of weeks off, which was very nice, but we're back now. So sorry for the hiatus, but normal service resumes. And actually, it's been quite nice whilst I've been away. There's not been loads and loads of news. There's enough to talk about this week, but I'm not inundated with stuff. So let's get straight into it. And last time we spoke, the big thing was about the retirement of Office 365 connectors in Microsoft Teams. Now, when I spoke about this last time, one of the things I really highlighted was the very aggressive timeline for turning this off. I'm pleased to say that there's been an update to that and the timeline has been pushed out. I don't think this was kind of that much of a surprise apart to everyone really, apart from maybe Microsoft. But here's the original blog post has been updated to say that they understand and appreciate the feedback the customers have shared with them regarding the timeline. So if you went and looked at the comments on this blog post, you will see many comments talking about the timeline and how it was far too short. And I imagine they've also heard that from their enterprise customers pretty strongly as well. So the big change they've made are that existing connectors will continue to work until December 2025. However, there's a big kind of thing on this. The owners of those connectors need to do something before the end of this year. So before December 31st, 2024, connector owners will need to update the URL they're posting to. Okay. So this is quite important because this affects the people that own the connectors. So it's not you, the IT admin, putting the connectors in. As I understand this, this is the people that write the connectors. So you need to go to your ISVs, you need to go to your partners, your vendors, and hassle them and say, have you updated your connector for your product to work? The other big part of this is that a lot of the connectors that people use are Microsoft provided connectors. The RSS one, the SharePoint one, the incoming webhook one. They're all first-party connectors. So hopefully Microsoft will make sure that their own connectors are up to date, and so you shouldn't have to worry about those. But for your third-party connectors, yeah, it's worth just kind of checking in with them and making sure they know about this and that they've got a plan. But generally, this is good news. It means that if you can get the connector owners to do something by the end of this year, then you've got until December 25. The other way of thinking about this is that if you don't want to take that dependency, you've got until the end of this year to move off the connectors. So that's the other way of thinking about it. Okay. All right. Next up, this is kind of really interesting. We're seeing this kind of fusion around Copilot, extensibility, around Azure OpenAI. And so this one is the ability to take your custom engine Copilot that you've built in OpenAI Studio and bring it into Microsoft Teams. Now, this uses the Teams AI library in quite a clever way. I'm not going to go through the whole blog post. What I am going to do is just show you the screenshots because I think, like, if you're already in this world, this will make sense to you. If you're not, or if you're listening on audio, go check out the blog post. But basically, this allows you to start in the Azure OpenAI Studio, the chat playground, which is on the screen at the moment. So hopefully will be familiar, where you can sort of set up your kind of instance, your chat instance. You can give it your prompts, you can add your data sources and all the rest of it. What is interesting is that they've added a new section to the deploy to button. So now you can deploy to a new Teams app, as well as a new Copilot in Copilot Studio, or like a web app. Previously, it was just a web app. So the big new thing here is the one-click button to kind of take what you've done in Azure OpenAI Studio and make it into a Teams app. Okay, and that uses the Teams AI library under the hood. It basically gives you a whole load of code. It's scaffolding the Teams AI library, but configured for the chat playground instance you've just been playing with in Azure OpenAI, which is really nice. It's a cool way of doing it. And it's really made me think actually about whether this is an alternative to using something like a declarative Copilot, because there are differences and there are similarities, and so maybe it's one of those ones you have to compare to see. But we're starting to see multiple, a couple of different ways of achieving the same thing, which I think is good. It's very Microsoft. They tend to kind of do these things and see which one works best, and then iterate from there. But yeah, I'm definitely going to, I think, give this a go I'm still waiting for the declarative copilot stuff to come out into public preview. I've got a project ready to go, so I might actually jump on this and see if this is a good kind of route for me. So I'm going to write it all up as blog posts if it is, so you can kind of keep an eye on that. What I might do is do it on both and then see kind of what happens. All right, next up, there's an update for the Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. It was the July update, but this is kind of the first time we've been covering it. The biggest new thing for me, I think, is the ability to debug apps, Teams apps, but in the desktop client, not always just the web client. So there's a new section for debugging in Teams Desktop, which I think is kind of cool. There's some other stuff in here as well, managed identity for Azure AI Bot Service, and a bunch of other things as well. This code tool stuff is interesting, actually. I saw this the other day, and I think it's really nice. That code tool extension is a really nice one for just demonstrating code, and I think it's really nice. So check out Code Tool, actually, if you haven't seen it before. It's really nice. All right, and last thing I want to talk about, I think, is it's a deprecation of a property. So the Microsoft Graph Online Meeting API, the one that lets you create new meetings on Microsoft Graph, up until now has allowed you to create a meeting without a passcode. That capability is being removed. You've got 3 years to do it. So it's going to be removed on September the 30th, 2027. Sorry, get my words in order. So that's how long you've got to make a final decision, right? So the ability to create a meeting without a passcode, that API to create the meeting without the passcode will be removed in 2027. However, effective end of September, so September the 30th this year, the default value when you create a meeting will be true instead of false. So right now, if you create an online meeting and you don't specify any other properties, the default behavior is that it will be created without a passcode. That's going to change. So from the end of this year, the default will be that it does have a passcode. Now you can manually specify in the property when you make the API call in the body, you can specify that no passcode or passcode is false, and that's fine, and that will continue to work until September 2027. So, this kind of brings it into line, I think, with the Microsoft Teams UI, where online meetings that get scheduled now have a passcode. So this is kind of falling in line with that. I think probably the thing to be aware of is that this could be a breaking change for your application, because if you don't specify the property because you're using the default and you're inheriting the default value, the default behavior is going to change. So probably, unless you're I don't know. For me, when I create a meeting, like an online meeting, I leave out all the properties I don't care about and inherit the default values. That's probably what most people do. And so that's probably what you're doing. What that means is your behavior is going to change, because all your meetings are now going to have passcodes instead. So you need to be aware of that passcode as it comes back in the body of the response when the meeting gets created, and you'll need to store it somewhere. So actually, this is quite a big deal if you're doing stuff with creating meetings that you then need to reference later, because all your meetings are suddenly going to start being created with passcodes. You can turn that off, but you need to make the code change to do so to pass that property, because the default is changing. And then you have 3 years to figure out what to do, because in 3 years' time, you're not going to be able to create meetings without passcodes. So bit of work now, quite a lot of work later. All right. I think that's everything. That brings you up to date with the last couple of weeks, hopefully. And yeah, we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks as Microsoft starts to kind of open up again after their summer holidays. Anyway, whatever it is you're doing, I hope you had a good couple of weeks, and I hope you have a good week this week. And I'll speak to you again next time.